Hello and welcome back, this is ProTaleDev back with another Dungeon Farm Tycoon game, and what we're going to be looking at is all the new things I've worked on in the last week or two. To start off with, we're going to talk about the fact that now monsters will actually be a child of a specific dungeon. This means that they will appear inside the dungeon and deactivate and activate when needed. This is really something for control of frame rate and things, that way monsters aren't still active while a dungeon isn't. Doesn't quite make sense if they were. Also, the dungeon UI stats is now in the editor, so we got this little stats section up here. So whenever I, let's say, add a new room, we will actually end up getting, it'll actually say on here. Now it does say 4, which is true. We can also add monsters in, so if we add a couple of these guys. Also, we can see the monsters on the actual grid. You couldn't see that before, but now you can, so you know where you're placing them. So I'll add a couple of these in, maybe that room and this room, and then one in there, just to show that off. Of course, you can click any one of these and it won't really matter. You can actually spawn in. Also, you can add a connector and it'll come up as well. So we can just add a couple of connectors, and you can see we do actually have a limit to how many we can spawn, which is good. We can also show off our next thing, which is when I press the pause button, our timer now pauses and the whole game pauses now. Before, some things were still playing, but now things are paused when I click the escape button. Okay, so once we're in the dungeon, you'll see we got our torch. Now, before, the torch lighting was a little bit broken, a little bit of a couple of issues, but now that's fixed. We've also got some collision issues with the weapons. That has also been fixed, and I'll show the weapons now. And also fixed some collision settings in the project settings themselves. But let's go back to our character and equip some weapons. So to do that, we're going to go into our character, fix that of course, and you'll notice immediately that we can change a few things on our character. A lot of this is still the same. There are some minor changes, but let's add in a couple of potions. Let's leave this large potion empty, and let's add the dagger in, and maybe the blade splitter, the split blade. Now that we've got all our things equipped, let's go into our dungeon. Remember, this one's empty, and let's go into our dungeon and show off what it looks like. So straight away, at the bottom here, we've got our UI that is now a lot different. It's a lot better looking, a little bit more nicer to look at. And I've done that because it just looked a little bit ugly before. Down at the bottom, you'll see that we've got a number of 1, and we got the blade. When I switch, you'll be able to see what we're switching to. So if I switch to this, we've got our blade out. And of course, we can use our attack. And we can switch to, let's say, our dagger, and then we can swing. Now you'll notice immediately when I swung, it's now hit 0 and it's disappeared, and we can no longer access it at all. It's gone. That is because that was its durability. It's only set at 1 just for testing, but the durability is now 0, so you can no longer use it. It's gone. It's also removed one weapon from our overall inventory. If you've crafted a bunch, you'll have a couple you can use. But we've also got our weapon here, and we've got 4. So every time I activate it, the durability of the weapon goes down. Once it hits 0, you won't be able to use it anymore. Also, we can see that I can flip now. I can go into different directions, and it'll flip it correctly. At the bottom, you'll see that we have our potions here. We can switch between them, but there's one that's marked out with an X. That's the one that we did not equip. It means it's not available to use. So if I just put a new dungeon down and start this, and I put a little young devil in there, just one for now, just for testing. And we go into our dungeon, and then we equip our dagger again. We can also click our numbers and things like I mentioned a second ago, but we now have our durability is of course 1. But you're going to notice something very immediate. Now, the way I've done the swapping is just by using either scroll wheel, the numbers, and this is done by, rather than using the toggle weapons selection using a bool, which is what I was using before, now I'm using these scrolls as just an activation, and then just having them cycle through a loop, which is much more efficient and better anyway. What I've also got is, of course, the animation change for the monsters. Now, all of our weapons are actually controlled on a brand new script. Rather than using the player movement, we're actually using the player item equipped script, which is a lot different, and I think it's a lot better to have this all separated because there's quite a lot of code, as you can imagine, with all the different weapons we've got. So out of interest, what we're going to do now is we're actually going to use a sledgehammer, which I believe has more durability, and we're just going to use that as an example instead of the dagger, which only has 1 durability. And we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to add in 1 monster, and I'm just going to do this to show off the damage. So now the damage is all working as before, but we also have some hurt animation and death animation. We also have our attacking and collisions correct, which is good. So if we go in here and I switch to our sledgehammer, you'll see our sledgehammer is there. Our animation should play correctly. So we're going over here, and these all should be working. Now this guy is actually very, very low level, only level 1. So when I hit him, we are taking a little bit of damage. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit him, and he should die instantly because of the amount of damage we do. And as you can see, he died instantly. What I'm actually going to do is go back into the editor and maybe put down some more. I wasn't expecting to get such a low level creature, but that can happen. Obviously this is a small dungeon, so you're going to get a variety of different ones. So let's add a couple in here. And then go back. Make sure we deactivate the grid and everything on it, so like we did. Go in here, and then we got our creatures. Now they're actually coming to us, so we'll just wait here. But we've obviously ran out of durability. But we can still hit because the durability isn't set up yet. But as you can see, as we're hitting them, their health is going low. We're hitting multiple ones. When we hit them, they turn slightly red. As you see, their animation stops. They turn a little bit red, and when they hit 0, they do like a little bit of they fly around a little bit and spin. The next thing to talk about, and last thing, which took a little bit of time to set up and get right, is the weapon section. So if we go in our weapon forging, our weapon crafting section, you will immediately see a few changes. So this wasn't working before, now it is. We only got 2 of them set up, which is the dagger and sword, but basically this will work with pretty much a brand new resources in the game, which I'll show in a second. But as you can see a couple of these here. So these different resources will either be found, created in the overworld in some way, like a lumber mill will create wood, or you'll have the ore and crystals. The ore will be created from mines, wood will be from things like lumber mills, and the last one is crystals, which can only be found in dungeons from enemies. So with these ingredients, these items, you will then be able to craft unique weapons. And that's kind of the reason to go into these dungeons, not just for gold, but really for the resources. 2 of these have been set up, the rest haven't been set up yet, and that is the old dagger and the blunt sword. So as you can see, it requires different resources. Now, I've coded it in so that I have over 100, so I can just craft these whenever. So if you craft them, you can actually add them to our the certain amount of weapons we have, which isn't quite working yet. Really, it's just this that's been sorted out and a couple of other details. So as you can see, we can change our different items, and for the sake of just showing what those materials are, those resources are, and what we've got, I've got it set up here. So we have a couple of massive changes to scripts, but I won't go into them in too much detail. Things like the weapons and potions and stuff has changed quite a lot over time. And it looks very, very different and a lot more complex. The first thing though I want to show here is all of these resources, or should I say the last thing, and it's specifically the dungeon crystals. So aqua, clear, we got lime, iris, rose, and night. Now I'll go into them in a little bit more detail in a future video. Maybe the next video we'll go into the resources a little bit more. But we also have down here, we have the ores, so we have iron, copper, gold, steel, silver, and of course black rock is our final one. These names aren't permanent, I might change them and create like a fictional ores. And then of course we have a very basic wood resource, which will be the handle for most of our weapons. Some of these ingredients like crystals and different ores and things, as well as water and food, will be used for potions. But specifically the wood is very much for maybe building buildings as well. We'll need iron or wood or things like that. So there's a lot of creativity I can use with these. And that's going to do it for this video. yeah, next time we'll probably look at the resources a little bit more, maybe have a lumber mill or a mine option to build, and maybe maybe finish off all of the different weapons that need to be made, as well as things like the potions. So this has been ProTaleDev, and I'll see you next time.